Welcome to the Safety Doc Podcast with author, radio host, and nationally recognized safety expert, Dr. David Perrodin. Join us each week as we discuss the best and most bizarre practices in safety preparation and crisis response. Follow Dr. Perrodin on Twitter at SafetyPhD. And remember, the truth will keep you safe.
This is Dr. David Perrodin, and I want to thank you as we begin another journey into school and community safety. If you're looking for industrial safety expert, Appalachian State University professor Dr. Timothy Ludwig, please visit www.safety-doc.com. Again, that's Dr. Timothy Ludwig at www.safety-doc.com. So I felt bad about something that happened over a month ago. And I know it's something I shouldn't be bothered about because it wasn't intentional. And, things happen. But I work for the School for the Blind. And one of our students, our older students, Felix, Friday the kids go home early because some of the kids actually fly home. Others, by bus and different transport and things like that. So really, once you get 1:30, 2 o'clock, day is pretty much done. So Felix is an awesome, fun, creative young man. Okay. And, he's asking me, he's like, hey, what's the temperature outside? Because I need to know what to wear, for the trip home. And guess what? I'm thinking, I am convinced it is 45 to 50 degrees outside. Now, I had not been outside since the morning, but there was a little bit of it. I thought, water melting off the roof and whatever. And so I'm convinced it's sunny. No empirical evidence to back this up whatsoever that it's warm. So I tell Felix, I'm like, Felix, it's warm outside. It's up to you if you want to wear a jacket. Like, that's your call, buddy. Not my call on that. But so the deal, though, is if he packs the jacket, it goes into his bag and then goes underneath in the bus. Okay. And so you have no access to it. Once the bus starts rolling, that's the deal. Okay. Whatever you've put away, you don't get until your stop. So he said, yeah, if that's the case, I'm not going to wear a jacket. Then it's just something extra and, bulky and whatever. I'm like, yeah, whatever. So later that day, I get done with my stuff. I go outside in my car, open up the door, hit with this piercing blast of like Arctic wind. And the temperature is like 25, not including whatever the wind chill is driving it down to, 20, 15 or whatever. And it is freezing. And I'm like instantly thinking, I just told Felix like a couple hours ago, it was like 45, 50 degrees sunny, spring-like weather. And I'm imagining him, getting on the bus and kind of shivering and being like, what's the deal here? I thought I could trust this guy. So it bothered me because I didn't intend to do that, of course. Checked in with him the next week. I'm like, hey, how was it ride home? And he said, yeah, I wore my jacket after all. Wore my jacket, So I'm like, crisis averted. So talking about Felix, you get some interesting requests with older students. Maybe just in general, but he said, I bought a lot of seeds, tomatoes, squash, green beans, carrots, everything. And I'm going to be building a garden in front of my house. And I need to enrich the soil for this garden. The kid's into this. He knows this stuff. Or kid, but he's young adult. He knows this stuff. So he's talking about ways he can do this. And I said, you know what, Felix? I said, I burn hardwood to heat my house. So I clear out buckets of ash, like very fine ash. I I mean, the stuff is, I can burn a cord of wood and get like a 5-gallon pail of ash. I mean, it'll burn down that well. It's that efficient. So, and I said, I can bring in some ash. It's hardwood because it's rich in nutrients and you can mix it up with your soil. And I think this would really be good. I kind of do it myself, but like I've already got a lot of ash on our garden and I'm glad to bring in some, for you. And, so you said, yeah, I totally would go for that. And he kind of knew already, he knew the difference, like softwood and he knew about like volcanoes, that things grow really well after the ash and stuff like that. So I said, we got to figure something out here though, because I don't really know how I'm going to package this for you, because I'm not going to put it in a bag, because the last thing we need is for you to carry around a bag of ash that opens up and all of a sudden we have a cloud of ash. I don't, let me think this out. And he's like, well, how about we put it in a sack? I'm like, I don't like that idea either. Back in my mind, I'm thinking, why don't we put it in a big urn? Be kind of fun, write somebody's name on it, but probably not appropriate. So came up with, I have a couple empty coffee containers. I don't know, what they hold, a couple quarts or whatever. So I'm going to just fill it in there and use like the industrial duct tape to tape them down on each side so they don't open up, and then just take with a marker and write on wood ash. Okay. So he's not able to read them. He's blind, completely blind. Had a sight once, but is blind. But obviously anyone, like, what is this? Why you got two weird containers of coffee? But so I'm looking forward to doing that. But interesting stuff. We've had some fascinating guests on the show the last 4 episodes. So today needed to be the break from that. And I have guests lined up. And hey, the analytics, the ratings are great. Shows with guests do really well. Shows with the safety doc do okay. But shows with guests do really, really well. So I want to talk about those 4 guests, and I've had some time to think about those shows and reflect upon those. So before we get in that though, thank you for listening to the Safety Doc podcast. I am Dr. David Proden, host of the show. We are in podcast 65, and it just seemed like the right night to do a podcast. I've got things kind of written out somewhat here, written out on this note card front and back for those of you watching, which are very few, but it is, I usually type out everything for the shows, but tonight felt like the night to do the show. I'd done some other work. I have clients. I do safety consulting with different parts of the country, and I did some work for a client tonight where I needed to record some things, and I just felt like tonight's the night to record the show. So I'm sounding in good voice tonight. Must be a very important message. So thank you for listening to the Safety Doc podcast on the 405 Media out of Los Angeles, California, with John Grant, the 405media.com. This show airs at 2 p.m. PST, Monday through Saturday. You can find the show there. I also post a 500 to 1,000 word blog post for every show. So you can learn more about the topics, if there's guests, anything I mention, any studies, they're all linked out there. So that's nice. I do that. It's condensed. You're not going to waste a lot of time. I mean, in a couple minutes, it's done. So yeah, I do that. Check that out. Thank you to Sprigeo, Sprigeo, Sprigeo.com out of Santa Barbara, the nation's leader in online bullying and school safety reporting, Sprigeo.com. So, and thank you to all of you. You're not the typical listeners. You want to have rhetoric-free information. We talk about safety, but we have just discussions in general, I think, about how we keep our agency and purpose and perspective in a world which has really got a lot of wonky things going on. And if we just look at the last 4 guests, Jim, Hector, Justin, and Trip, wow, what different perspectives. from all of those folks. So I did get called out by a good friend, fellow podcaster, Aaron Clary of the Clary Podcast, CaptainCapitalism.blogspot.com. And Captain, I did notice on one of your responses to a client who wanted to become a Gen Xer, you threw in some sound effects at the end. Didn't know if that was a little homage to the safety doc or what that was, but Aaron called me out on might want to scale back some of the sound effects stuff. I think it's a good idea. I was having a little bit too much fun, maybe with adding in. I think there's a place for it. But yeah, it takes a long time to edit, folks. When you put sound effects in a podcast, especially when you're doing like 2 hours, which will not be today, by the way. We won't be that long. It would be like about an hour, but it takes a long time to edit sound effects in. And so actually it easily adds 5 to 6 hours to a podcast. If you go in and you try to match up. So if someone is snowshoeing, that you have snowshoes in the background, or fishing, or, whatever it is, or a car driving by. And, at some point it gets to be a little too much, but Aaron, though, hey, I did listen again to my interview with TJ Martinell and thought, yeah, some of the sound effects, maybe the music stuff got a little over the top, and I probably had the volume up a little too much on sound effects, but I still think it's a really good podcast. And people, for my analytics, it is approaching 1,000 downloads, which is phenomenal. Again, this is kind of a niche market or niche market, I guess. And of course, it is just frosting whoever watches on YouTube. I know there'll never be a lot of people that do that, but some people like to do that. And there's a reason, folks. There's a reason I do the YouTube version. It's because of my clients, because of my people that I'm working with in the safety world. They want to be able to see, one, who I am, second, that I can present on a topic, and I think third, also that I can interview and have discourse with other people. So usually they want to see clips of shows if they're interested in doing some work with me. So the podcast being on YouTube does serve that purpose. So hey, let's talk about a couple things right out of the gate. So let's go back and take a look at the four interviews that I had in the last 4 podcasts. Jim Mallard of the Mallard Podcast, which has been rebranded as Radio and Podcasts. Jim, incredible guy, gets these great interviews, and I was able to actually have him help facilitate my interview with Trip Helix, because Trip had been on his show. And then so yeah, I was Jim and I did a show right after the Hawaii missile alert crisis. I was on his show, actually had him on my show then, and we talked about how that really was a non-topic. It didn't get much coverage. It's vanished now, and it's only been a couple months ago where we're kind of on the brink of nuclear war, right? And there were never any presentations about why. Or how the system really works. Like, here's how NORAD works. Here's how the EBS, Emergency Broadcast System, works, and all of that. So there are certain things that Jim and I talked about if that didn't make sense, and then it got real murky, and all of a sudden the person who was involved in it got reassigned and then got fired and later and all of that stuff. But there's reasons we pontificated why that might have happened. But we also got into this area called the Mandela Effect, which you might be familiar with, maybe not. But basically, the Mandela Effect is people saying that they remember things differently than how they were. So just taking you off the top there, President Mandela, people will remember him as dying in prison when actually he didn't die in prison. He lived, 7-9 years later. But then also Fruit Loops being spelled F-R-O-O-T versus F-R-U-I-T. And it seems like it's congregated amongst cereals. Like people will say, I remember this was Cap'n Crunch instead of Captain Crunch and all sorts of stuff. So when I see what people put out there is like, here's the 30 examples of the Mandela Effect, and 28 are brands of cereal, and one is Mandela and, dying in prison and not dying in prison, and one is something else. I'm like, this is really good marketing. But the weird part of this, I guess it's all weird, but the part of this is it's a large number of people that have this same collective memory. And it's like, how does that happen? How does that happen? So I believe it happens. I'm not doubting that happens. That, if you have 100 people, like 30 people would say, I remember when Fruit Loops was spelled like this way, or the Berenstain Bears versus the Berenstain Bears. I'm like, who in the hell would name a book the Berenstain Bears? Anyway, like that doesn't make sense to me at a face level. Like somebody would look at that and say, yeah, this is a really cool story, but like, why would we want to call them the Berenstain Bears? I don't know, but, so I'm looking at this, I'm saying, I think this is really good marketing. I think we know there are millions and billions of dollars that are put into, the marketing professionals, and that they have psychiatrists, psychologists, and the studies and the way that people remember things and try to get people to purchase their products. That's so, and also to manipulate the image of a product that might not have been as strong in the past to make it appear stronger than what it was. So I said, I think this is all happening, and I don't exactly understand it. But then I went in deep, and I tried to figure out what are other examples that might be happening of let's say like time travel is authentic. Wouldn't we see other residue besides, because they're saying time travel might be due to might cause this, Mandela Effect, could be due to time travel. People go back and then they change up things, and then our parallel universes change. A little deep for me right there, but I'm thinking, wouldn't we see other residue if this was the case? But then I'm thinking, well, maybe we do, but we just don't recognize it. Okay. Think about it. We've had basically 100 years of really rapid, super advanced technology, and where we've gone even with like a microchip and things like that. And so, I'm thinking, I don't know. There's other parts of this that I'm trying to put together, some missing pieces to at least have be a part of the conversation, be at the table on this Mandela Effect. So it's really cool. I want to get a follow-up with Jim on that, maybe on his show. I don't think it pays to talk about the Hawaii crisis because it's like crickets chirping on that. There's nothing. But I think this Mandela Effect, there's more to this, much more to this of the structured memory. Anyway, there's this thing in court where it's called the forgetting curve, and it's well known, it's well studied, and the conflating of memories. So the more you retell a story, it kind of changes, and you can actually be convinced through persuasive techniques by a very skilled, somebody in military intelligence or investigator, something like that, that you actually had committed this crime or whatever when you didn't. So there are ways you can manipulate the mind. But anyway, I want to talk more about that with Jim, and maybe if we can get somebody else in the loop on that, because I think something's there, but I don't think your strongest argument for like the Mandela Effect is to start to bring out cereal boxes and say, I remember this as this, or I remember Oscar Mayer as being spelled, this way or whatever, or this jingle was different. I'm like, I don't know. And there are things like I go through on the list. I'm like, no, like I remember this as being like this. I don't ever remember this being a different way. So, anyway, Hector Solis. This was possibly my best piece of journalism ever. When Hector and I paired up and worked on the grooming, child trafficking piece. And that got used also with graduate students in a course that I was teaching. So very, very popular piece. It was the best blog post I ever wrote. And Hector and I worked for weeks putting that together. Now, Hector had done a ton of interviews and research and with his awareness podcast before all of this, but then just how we would put this together as something for my show, we probably put about 2 weeks into that. And we tried to come up with ways that parents or school counselors, whatever, but think maybe more parents, questions they could ask their kids if they were concerned about grooming. If they think my kid might be getting groomed, there might be something going on here. I need to find out more about this. And there isn't really a question set out there for that. And there isn't an input set, meaning questions you put forward of reporting like I'm being groomed. And most kids or young adults or even adults that are groomed, he gave the story in one of his podcasts about a college lady in college, I think planning on going to med school, one step away from that, and got involved with a groomer, and that was kind of the end. But there aren't the words, and then once you start to have this relationship with a groomer, and maybe you've exchanged an inappropriate picture or something like that, you're 14 years old, the groomer's going to say, if you say anything, if you report this, that picture is going to be all over to your parents' workplace. I'm going to post it in your neighborhood. It's going to be online. It's going to have your name. You're going to be ruined for life. So, there's a lot of incentive, of course, not to say anything. So there's very extreme tactics that these groomers will go through once they can build this relationship, then to make sure that these kids don't talk. So Hector and I came up with, I think, it was 7 or 8 key questions to ask to try to elicit if there was something going on that might be grooming. And then I also worked with some of my clients in the school world on their user interface systems on how to capture concerns of grooming, which really is more third party. It's more like somebody else seeing it than someone who comes and says, I feel like I'm having too many text or too many phone calls from this adult or whatever. It usually is third party. It's like my friend, Sarah, whatever, she's totally changed, and now she's always like online, and she's been getting these like phone cards sent to her or like money wired to her account. Those are like, whoa, red flags. Like then that those totally fall into that area. So to me, I thought that was one of the best public service pieces that this show has ever done. And I'm glad it was popular, continues to be popular in downloads. It means the message is getting out. People have contacted me, the work that Hector's done on that. And that's why I really appreciate the people that listen to this show, that retweet, and to get that out there. Because again, if we affect a few people with this and that message, and someone's like, hey, I remember there was, you've got some concerns about, your kids and maybe, some weird texting that's going on with an adult or whatever. Well, there was this podcast, and it's Safety Doc guy I follow, and I'm going to find it. There was an episode, and let's listen to it, or here it is. Like, and there's some things in there, and I think there's a blog post and whatever. So anyway, like, that is really great scholarly work. And I'm glad to have done that and to put the time into that with Hector. So Justin, another interview, Justin Dooley. We did this interview on the night or right before this allegedly major storm was to hit. Okay. So, which was called Mateo. Like they name snowstorms now, never before in Wisconsin, but I guess Mateo, and it kind of fizzled. It wasn't much at all. So we do this storm, and it's timely because part of what we're doing is about safety in general in cars. But I kind of had mine themed toward like, well, if you're driving in slide off the road because of snowstorm, icy roads or whatever, here's what you should have. That was a fun interview. With Justin. We had a lot of areas we roped around. He actually shared a story about when he was in high school, he tipped over his moped or whatever, like at an intersection. And instead of somebody yelling or coming out to help him, they yell out the window, hey, like pick up your bike and get out of here. Like holding up traffic, man. But, Justin, that was fun. We brought in 5 items each. So again, if you're watching the YouTube version of that episode, but we had 5 items each. I remember I had like a hammer, the special hammer that broke out a window, and an industrial glow stick type thing, and some stuff. And he brought in, a safety kit, and I think we talked about jumper cables and stuff like that. And so it was fun. We're going to do another show in a few weeks. I'm not sure of the topic, but it's going to, you listen to it. We're going to have a good time. We're going to have a good show. And we're going to do something again that's going to have a top 5. And we're going to challenge each other who came up with the better top 5. Got some ideas. Don't want to work on that, or don't want to share too much on that right now. But Justin Dooley, and then after that, totally shifted gears. Went to an interview with, had Trip Elix on the show. Trip Elix. So he's published books on keeping kids safe, and on also, your personal identity. Wrote a novel, Extortionware, and then has Browse Without Being Tracked, a free guide off of his website, tripelix.com. And so now Trip Elix really knows the side of the internet, kind of the underside of the internet. How things happen when all of a sudden, which isn't all of a sudden, but, we find out, hey, half of the nation's credit was ripped off in a heist, or whatever, and so you're talking to somebody who knows how all of this happens and knows it really intense and deep. So, I get into that interview and am able to bring things to you that were far beyond anything I knew. Like he's talking, I was against the Tor browser in an earlier show. I think my 10th trip to the dark web, or whatever I called it, about 10, 12 shows ago. And Trip was saying, no, Tor is actually a good thing. The Onion router, that browser, you can get to a lot of sites without being tracked. That was his whole thing. Like, don't be tracked. And he gave all of these tips of, use, buy the cards, like the gift cards and stuff like that, and use those and just ways to minimize being a target of identity theft and just in general, like what's happening to your data, like how it's being sold and just how corporations, it's just crazy. So he's an advocate on that, and has done a lot, gave terrific advice. If you have kids and they're under 14, here's what you should do for their social media profile. If they're over 14, here's what you should do. And this whole thing too of like, we can go dark on the internet, meaning like you could say, I'm not doing Facebook anymore. I'm not doing Instagram and all of these things, and I'm done. And he's the bad side of that. Like, he's like, you can't do that. You cannot apply to colleges and not have a social footprint because that looks odd. Then you have to explain that. And the real world is you're going to have to navigate in a social environment in most corporations and things like that. So they're going to want to see that. He talked about if you're older than 14, once you get 14 and stuff, if you can create like some essays or a blog, a scholarly type blog, as long as it's not political, but maybe it's cooking or weather or something else and stuff like that, or some history stuff. That really serves you well down the road, because those types of things show up then for college admissions, show up then in job searches and so forth. So really a cool show, about 2 hours long, edited down to that. We had a lot of content, so we got it down to some core content. That show's performed really well too. Trip Elix. So, and Trip would challenge me a few times, on things, because I said, isn't the whole thing of like the economy about like we have to be consumers and it's a fiat currency, and if that doesn't happen, then whatever. And he's like, Dave, nope. Here's what's really going on.
Thank you for tuning in to the Safety Doc Podcast with the nation's leading safety expert, Dr. David Perrodin, author, radio show host, university instructor, researcher, expert witness, and consultant. Powerful testimonials. Dr. Perrodin has a strong reputation as the go-to safety consultant, and he was still able to exceed our expectations. When we went looking for an expert in the field of crisis preparedness and prevention, David was the single person we pursued. Not easy stepping into the touchier subjects of life, but Dr. David pulls it off. Take a listen. Now, back to Dr. David Perrodin and the Safety Doc Podcast.
What I wanted to talk about, though, was the word mantra. And then also, this all came up because I had some time off, and I read a book about haunted Great Lakes. And it talked about the captains. And when the ships would go down, the captains, for the most part, would go down with the ship. That was just the part of the job. So, you would go down with the ship, captain. And if you didn't go down with the ship, I think you could actually be like jailed if you didn't go down with the ship, in most cases. So really pretty harsh stuff. We're talking, like the 1880s, stuff like that. But, when they were starting to get the lighthouses across the Great Lakes, but a lot of these ships in the storms, you'd have a big storm, you could lose like 20 ships. I mean, it's crazy. But anyway, I wrote down here, the captain forgoes his own rapid departure of a ship in distress. This is the old, the captain goes down with the ship. And again, my handwriting isn't the best here, and concentrates instead on saving other people. It often results in either the death or belated rescue of the captain as the last person on board the ship. So, the captain goes down with the ship. So how much of that really happens in society today? I'm trying to put this over here, which is, I don't know if it happens. I don't think it happens as much. We look at the 2008 banking crisis. If the heads of banks got the golden parachutes and kind of their exit, they weren't going to jail. Equifax and the breach, people retired, things like that. The selling of data or the harvesting of data and tracking by Facebook, which people didn't know to what extent that was happening and how that was shared. Mark Zuckerberg still has a job and a company. Stock's down a little bit. That doesn't matter. That'll come back up. So this whole thing of the captain goes down with the ship, I think there was an honor in that, and there still is an honor in that. And I know people who live their life that way, of the captain goes down with the ship, meaning that their integrity is not going to be compromised if they're involved in something, like the captain. His integrity as being the captain, and at the end of the day, that ship goes down, it's probably going down with it. So let's talk about the word mantra. It can be broken into two parts: man, which means mind, and tra, which means transport or vehicle. So in other words, a mantra is an instrument of the mind. All right, I swear this will make sense. Okay, at the end of the day, the mantra is meant to bring you back to simplicity. So your mantra is meant to be this very simplistic kind of highway to your core of what you're all about. This is your mantra. It brings you back to that. We live in a complex world. It's easy to get lost in the details. Mantras can help you circle back to the simplistic approach to life and focus on those things that inspire you and truly make you happy. But I think the other part of this is a mantra. Okay. A mantra also brings you back to what your core is. And I guess to try to explain that, it's like the Dark Knight Batman. So you have the Joker, and of course you have Batman too. But the thought with the Joker there is the Joker just wants to see chaos. He's incorruptible. He burns a huge pile of money, 50 feet high pile of money. Things like that don't mean anything to him. So he's incorruptible. Just, and to some extent, Batman, largely incorruptible. Now all of us, we have a vice. People have vices. We're not incorruptible. And even as Tripp talked about that, people do have weaknesses, places to compromise. I think it's natural. It's human. But we get into mantra. If you have a strong mantra, which I believe goes into what I've talked about before, into member check. Meaning that if you are willing to listen to people that you value and seek out people that you value their feedback, and also that you're able to do not only introspection, but awareness. Awareness is deeper. And you stand with your position no matter what, because you believe in it. Okay. That you believe that that position is right. And I'm going to bring this all together right now. So I was asked by one of my clients. So when I say clients, I am referring to people that I work with on a contract basis for school safety services. And again, I don't do this in my state, so these are different locations. But one of my clients approached me and said, Dave, we would like to change our reporting system in a certain way. Okay. And we want you to create this. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm looking at this and I'm like, I understand why you're doing this. I understand completely why you're doing this. But if I change this to what you're asking me to change to, it no longer is the most effective system it can be. And it's probably going to create some possibilities where there's going to be gaps in the systems or gray areas or slipping through the cracks, all of those types of things, which then when something bad really happens, you immediately go back and you totally overhaul the system and eliminate all of those things. But it was one of those requests, which was, I couldn't come up with a solution that would not have compromised me as a safety professional. And again, this wasn't anything that they were asking to do underhanded or anything like that. I think they had a genuine issue and were trying to approach that in a way that I was saying, I can't be a part of the way that you're trying to approach this. And maybe it works. Maybe it would work. Okay. I can't do that though. Like, it's not the way that I work as a safety professional. So it was that member check moment too, where I said, I respect you for the work we've done in the past, for what you're doing, but I'm not going to be able to be a part of this. So we're going to have to go our different ways at this point. So they were kind of taken back a little bit by that, because when you're in a contract client agreement, customer client, and the expectation largely, I think, is that the client, you'll match the client's request. Okay. So as the provider, I mean that if they're asking, this is what I want, okay. So, yeah. And I was like, yeah, I can't do that, because I don't think it's the best practice. And also it's just not, for me, ultimately, this isn't aligning with the way that I believe things should be done. So maybe, again, there's other people out there. Check them out. So we had this parting of the ways, kind of this hiatus where, and it was fine with that. And it's all confidential, and you have a very sophisticated agreements put together in arrangements, like this too. Like, so, you're never sharing information that you've worked on with a client and vice versa and things like that. And those are all done for, protection of both parties, that I'm not creating something and then they're reselling it or packaging it and giving it to whatever, and kind of vice versa. And also that some of the data that I'm privileged to from certain clients, I use that and analyze that in a certain way. But of course, if that data were to get out and to be public and it didn't have the qualitative part, the discussion to go with it, it might be interpreted in a certain way and stuff. So again, it's all above the table, but there's a way businesses operate in this industry. There's a way things operate. And I was contacted again by this client, and the client said, you know what? Like what you said makes sense. And it's right. Okay. So basically kind of my mantra, bringing me back of my mantra is, that it's best practice, empirical based safety. It's kind of my mantra, bringing me back to simplicity. If I can back it up with research, and if it is a system which is accessible and is going to go through the due diligence of investigations and all of that for safety situations, then I'm good. So my mantra, I don't know, I just changed my mantra like 10 times, but like due diligence, safety, and hiccups, I guess. I wasn't going to bend from that. So they came back and they said, you know what, we really appreciate that you said this, because we've liked everything you've done for us. And I mean, what I turn out at the end of the day to my clients is very high quality. It's researched. I give them the research. I stand behind everything. And, so I have a very strong reputation in the field. And they approached me and they actually want me to do more than what I was originally doing with them. And I thought that was really cool. I thought that was really, really cool. It showed, one, that they respected my opinion. I was strong to the mantra. And also, we have a lot of great things that we're going to accomplish together going forward. And for them now, they also have a member check. They know that I'm just not somebody out there that's getting a check from them. That if I don't agree with what they're saying or what they're asking or whatever, and we can't come to some kind of workable means on that then I'll part ways. So they trust me. So it comes down to trust. It comes down to trust and the ability to sometimes tell people, I can't do this, or I'm not going to do this because whatever. That is a trust point. If somebody does that, and even like just in life, somebody does that to you, that's meaningful. That's somebody who cares about you and your best interest. Because I said, I don't think this is in your best interest to do this, from my perspective. And maybe, again, I'm wrong, one person, but from my perspective. But again, people who tell you that, and what's your reaction going to be right away? You're going to be defensive. You're going to pull back a little bit, be like, what? It's not what I expected. But at the end of the day, we want people around us who are going to be those member checks. We want those member checks. So the one thing with mantra gets mixed up a lot with intentions. Like, here are my intentions. I intend to do this. I intend to do whatever. That's different, though, than a mantra. A mantra really drives down to that core. A mantra is where you will walk away because it just doesn't align with what you are about. Okay? So I want you to think about that. I want you to think about your mantra and also intentions. And the worst thing I think you can do is, especially when you have a good relationship with a client, is to not be totally upfront and say, if something isn't working, to lay it out and to part ways. And ultimately, if that client does rethink it, it's because of what you've done, and it's that trust factor. And do that in life. Do that with other people that are close to you, are meaningful for you to vest in, but just to say, listen, and the thing is, it's two-way street, right? It's two-way street. It comes back to you. So a couple other things here. Hey, I bought a leaf blower in vac, a gas-powered one. First time ever. Like, I had this electric one, which was, those things aren't built very well. And then you have this industrial, heavy cord. So like the cord is in a 5-gallon bucket, and it wraps up and stuff. It's actually pretty ingenious because I had to buy the bucket separate. It was more than the leaf blower, I think. And vac. And the vac is a small bag. But anyway, so you go around the house, and I have stones around my house and a lot of bushes. And then, of course, we have trees, oak leaves and maple and stuff like that. and it's a task to get everything plugged in. And then as you're going around, you can only go so far. And, the cord gets caught up in the trees and the solar lights and stuff like that. So I bought a gas powered Echo leaf blower. Same place, small engine place where I bought my lawnmower, snow blower, my 4-stroke Briggs & Stratton weed whacker, which is an absolute beast. Like, I'm a pretty big guy, so like this thing doesn't bother me at all. Like, I can handle it. But if like you weren't, I mean, this thing is like, it's heavy. I mean, and I've had this like 12 or 14 years and it's still in great shape. I mean, take it in every once in a while and do the servicing on it, whatever has to be done. But, man, that thing is, but that's, you could cut a tree down with that thing. I mean, 4-stroke weed whacker. It's crazy. So yeah, I got my leaf blower vac, gas powered. So it's good because my lawn goes way back and then it butts up against a park. And there's some trees and stuff. So of course, we all kind of try to blow our leaves and stuff into the park, and which is fun. I mean, it's the part of the park which is just like left over. It narrows down. It's like trees and high grass and stuff like that. There's no playing in that part of the park. Like the actual playground stuff is literally another 500 feet down from that. So, if anything, in summer, it's just all filled with snakes anyway. But, so yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. I am, I'm excited. And then, I don't know if anyone's watched the movie Insidious. So it's been out a while. I watched it with my older daughter, which, so it was on TV. So Haunted, like this family, I don't know, this is like possession or whatever and things like that. So, it's pretty scary. Like it's meant to be that way. And, right. It's kind of obvious, but anyway, at the same time, it was a little bit corny because they have this dad. His son is like in a coma, but his actually like soul has been invaded by like someone from the dark side who hasn't passed over, and the dad has to cross over and try to get his son back. And the whole thing is like, it's pretty casual. Like the dad is like, once he crosses over, like trying to find his son, it just seems like too casual, too passive. And my daughter is pointing this out too. She's like, wouldn't this guy like be all like pumped up and like ready and take on anybody? And I'm like, you do that to me. Ghost does that to me. Spirit does that to me. Like you're getting the full tilt here of the safety doc. And actually in this, he's being coached by some psychic or whatever on the other side, some medium. You can physically overpower him. You have the power of life. And he actually was able to push this guy down and be like, I'm lowering the shoulder and that guy's down, or that ghost or that spirit. I'm like, I don't care. I'm in hunt mode. You get dad over there. You get the safety doc over there. The safety doc's in hunt mode. Ghost, you watch out. I'm not passive. I'm not going to be walking around looking. I'm searching. You are the one. You're the ones or whatever. It doesn't matter. Okay. So I just didn't get it. It didn't have the anger. It didn't have the passion and the emotion. And it got to the point where it just got to be almost ridiculous of how that movie was. But it did make me think about that too, of like, how hard you'd fight for something or whatever. And yeah, something like that had happened to me or somebody that I knew and stuff like that. I'm going full tilt. And, again, I am bringing the shoulder and bringing the linebacker moves to you. And that's what you're going to be getting. So, hey, had new rims built for my bike, not bought for my bike, built custom rims. There's a bike place. And these guys, all they do is bikes. One guy he has a suit, a little older than I am. And the other guy is referred to as the tattoo man. He's really cool. Great. He's a great bike mechanic, but in like forums, they're like the guy in the suit and the tattoo man. But, this guy, tattoo man, I forget what his name is. And that's not meant to be derogatory at all. This is great. This guy's talented. He's worked on my bike. I got a nice bike. But the rims go after a while on these touring racing type bikes, and the spokes, and you can't keep the tensions and everything just kind of goes bad. And it was time. So he built these rims, and it took him, a while. So built the rims, individual spokes, did all the tensioning, repacked. It was a work of art, and they're so much stronger now. And I actually also put in a new metal, more of a higher end gearing system for me. And that's really cool. So, but yeah, we had a snowstorm last week with like 5 inches of snow, and we still have a little snow. So could be like 70 on Thursday. I'll be getting the bike out. So I'm so thrilled because, the Safety Doc loves to bike 70, 80 miles. I'm ready. And actually I have a area we designated in a kitchen cabinet with a little pull out thing, because I said, I have a routine, not a ritual, right? TJ Martinell, who I also interviewed. How did I miss TJ Martinell out of this group? Oh my goodness. TJ Martinell, the great tjmartinell.com. Oh, that was great. Really emulate a lot of things he does, the way he lives his life. His photography is up on his wall. He's done reconnaissance to the British Isles, seen the Constitution. Great guy. Great, terrific interview. Anyway, I'm going back. So I've got all my stuff. When I bike, I put together beef jerky, Swedish fish, whole grain crackers. I don't know. I've got like a mix of things I put together, and get all of that because I have so many calories. Nuts too, like for protein. I want to make sure I get protein, but then I also have to get stuff that I can turn into calories pretty fast too. So I put all this together, and I mix it from this container, and then I get all of it ready. So it was all kind of thrown up there. So we actually put it in this container. I just pull out. But for me to take a bike ride, and then I have to charge all of my lights because I have lights on my helmet. I bought a new helmet too. Bought a new high-end helmet, and it moves if you wipe out. The helmet will turn a little bit to lessen the risk of a brain injury. It's pretty sophisticated stuff. And better than the helmet I had, I think, and this is newer technology. It's also neon. I wanted to get a neon helmet. I've seen a few of them. They're very visible. And of course, when you bike, your head is the highest part. So as you're cresting hills and stuff, I think it's really helpful. I do a lot of country biking in through paved country roads. So, but anyway, I have a light on the back that charges by USB, and then also the main light in the back of my bike. And then I have a flashing white light on the front. That's all USB. So I have to charge all this stuff up. It takes a hell of a lot of time to charge these things actually. But then they'd stay charged, for 20 hours or whatever. But so I'm down, charging up everything before and get my bike, and you got to check the tire pressures. And it's really, there's a lot you got to put into a trip, but it's well worth it. It is worth it 1,000,000 times over. So I'm excited to get out and with the new rims, super excited about that. So, hey, what else here? We got a couple minutes left on this Safety Doc podcast. Oh, my dad. Dad inherited one of my computers. I gave him one of my older ones years ago when I had upgraded. And I thought it was more recent than what it was, but it wasn't. It was 15 years old, running Windows XP, and it couldn't update anymore. And it was just, old and bad. And in its day, it was something, but its day was long, long, long ago. So I got him a new computer, and doesn't have Windows 10, has Windows 7 Pro. And it's an industrial machine and a LED high output Dell monitor, really cool that you can view from different angles, and you can tilt and stuff like that. And it, so it's just really nice. Got a really nice setup. New keyboard and mouse, and instead of wireless, wired, which I think I'm going to go with too, because I get a lot of interference down here. Got a really nice setup. And they built it in my hometown, or in my town here. There's a lady who, builds them. She's older. And, really, I checked in a couple times with her, and I was running a little test questions by her. She knew all the stuff. And she built this awesome system, and not for that much money either. I went up and took apart my dad's old system. His big thing was, can you save my bookmarks? So I'm like, yeah, I can save the bookmarks. And it was able to do that and move those over. And he saved like everything to one file. So I just had to copy it over to a hard drive, flip it back over onto the new machine. And it wasn't a lot of stuff. It's mostly like Word type documents. So he's not into producing podcasts or anything like that. So stuff that takes, literally took me 5 minutes to transfer back and forth. But I set this machine up, and it is really nice, and it's working great for him. So I feel really happy about that, because you can't get the Windows 7 stuff. They force you into the 10, and then if you buy stuff from the stores like a Walmart or Best Buy or anything like that, it's got all this bloatware on it and all this crap you don't need. So basically, I'm like, it's got on what he needs. He's Microsoft Word. He needs a PDF reader. He needs to be able to get to the net. He needs to be able to get to his printer and use his scanner and stuff like that. And so that's all I set it up for. Boom, set it up. And it's really nice. So that machine is super well made. It's going to last him. And we took the old one downstairs, and I'm carrying like the CPU unit. My God, that thing was like 30 or 40 pounds. And like the new CPU is, like 5-8 pounds. The monitor's maybe like less than a pound, even though it's 22 inch. It's like, and this old stuff was just so heavy. It just, man. So he was thrilled. And again, I was happy for him because, and one of the things he wanted me to bookmark was some MLB, Major League Baseball sites, because he follows baseball a lot. And some of the sites, like, he couldn't do anymore because like they weren't XP compatible. So like, it was just crazy. It was time. And, and I voted. And every time I go to the voting booth, like, I have bad experience. I'm not a great visual spatial guy. I'm just not. I think I shared the story. When I had my firefighter training, the part I got wrong was plat book. I couldn't read a plat book. A plat book is like a map. So like, you have a fire out in the country, it'd be like, it's at this coordinate, like 8.21, and then over here on the Y. I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea. And today, actually, the stuff's so automated. And they use drones to find quickly if there is a fire on a plat of land where it's at and stuff like that. But also voting, though, I always like, you can vote for one, but not three, and you can't vote party or whatever. And there'd be a lot of times I'd go through and I'd put the thing in, and it'd be like, meh. Then someone would come over and be like, hey, like, we're going to issue you another ballot, any questions? I'm like, and it's like the guy who remembers, I was like, I've been voting since the only question was, should we remain part of Great Britain or not? The guy who's been doing this forever. And he's like, dude, how are you not, kind of to me, like subtly, like, how are you not figuring this out? I'm like, I don't know. So, but I got it right this time, like, I'm apprehensively like putting it through the machine, and it takes, I'm like, yes, vote it. In the election, which really probably didn't mean much of anything, because a lot of the people like weren't running against anyone either. Do you want to vote for, Bob Janikowski, or do you want to vote for the write-in candidate? I don't know. I guess I'll vote for Bob. So he's probably going to win. Anyway, so what we talked about today, just kind of some touchback on the shows, talking about what your mantra is. And mantra is different than intention. Staying strong in your mantra and in your member checks. And sometimes it's better to just walk away, professionally to walk away. Not sometimes. I mean, if you feel that way, it's better to do that. I've done that more than once actually in life. And it's going to serve you well.
This has been the Safety Doc Podcast with author, radio show host, and leading safety expert, Dr. David Perrodin. Remember to check back each week for the latest, best, and most bizarre practices in safety preparation and crisis response. You can find Dr. Perrodin on Twitter at SafetyPhD. And remember, the truth will keep you safe.